All right, we're going to hear from a trio of advocates. You know, it all has to do with getting stuff done. How do you do it? How do you build? How do you advocate to get the jobs done that you want to have done? Effective rail advocacy really combines several different things: grassroots coalition building, legislative engagement, and economic messaging. You have those three components and you have a winner. So I want to call up three to come up on the stage here: Lonny Stern, Keun Lee, and Katy Atkiss, and I'm going to tell you just a tad about each one of them here. Lonny is now Senior Government Relations at Lime, and until recently he was formerly the Executive Director at Movability in Austin. That's the Transportation Management Association of Central Texas, and the agency works with individuals and employers to offer transportation options other than by car. Katy Atkiss is the Managing Director of the Houston-based Texas Streets Coalition, which now is up to how many members? 30-ish? 50, wow, okay. They are the umbrella supporter for a number of transportation advocacy organizations around the state. And Keun Lee is kind of new to this, I guess. Yeah, a little bit. Policy research chair for a new organization, a recent organization formed, the Dallas Area Transit Alliance, called DATA. And they are a rider-run advocacy group that works for better public transit in the greater Dallas area. So each one's going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll have a few little nibbles on advocacy and how to get things done. So I guess, Lonny, we're going to start with you.
Well, hello, everybody. You made it to the last panel. Thank you very much for staying around. My name's Lonny Stern, and as mentioned, I was serving as the Executive Director for the Transportation Management Association for Central Texas called Movability. And just for some context, we just had a panel about building rail, and that does not happen in a vacuum. You need to have an election to make that happen. And that's really what we're talking about today, are the tactics and the strategies that it took to get rail passed. So for context, I was working at the Austin Transit Partnership as the Director of Community Engagement, and at the time of the election, and then afterwards. Before that at Cap Metro for several years as first a coordinator and then a manager of community engagement. And my background goes much further. In fact, I worked on the 2004 election as a contractor because I so much wanted to see Austin move forward in that. Let's see, okay, you've got my slides up now. So what I'm planning to talk about here is a little bit of a snapshot of what worked for Austin. We'll talk about the light rail timeline, then look at each of the elections just quickly, and then talk about the engagement methods that made it possible to get to yes after 25 years of trying to do it. And so again, we'll look at this. I just think it bears mentioning that Cap Metro started in 1985, and then shortly after that was told that if you want to build rail, you can't just do it. You need to make sure that people vote in order to have that. And so they tried a few times, starting in 2000, and then we'll go into each of those. So we've had 4 elections to get to yes in 2020 for Project Connect. So that first election was in 2000, and something I think is pretty important to note in all of these is what the election cycle was like. So this was that Bush-Gore election in 2000, same time, same squeaker of a result. And if you look at it, they were proposing a 52-mile system. We just saw 9.8, right? For $919 million, and right now we're pushing like $10 billion on the $9 million. So I don't know how true these numbers were, but regardless, this is what they were pushing. At the time, we had no land use for TOD at all, anywhere. This was just a dream. And something important is that this was the entire Cap Metro service area voting on it. So if you really dial down, you can see that 50.4% said no. But if you look at who said no, it was mostly people in the outlying suburbs, not the people inside the central city. And so that was a tactic for the next election. In 2004, there was a commuter rail referendum. If you've been to Austin, you know there is a freight line that also now runs people. And the goal was, give them a taste of rail, and then they'll want more rail. And at the same time, since they didn't want to focus on a federal grant for it, we tried to do it all with local dollars. As a result, you get a low frequency service because you can't run people and freight on the same tracks at the same time. It's something that we're working on now. But this election went over very well. $60 million, 32-mile commuter service using existing tracks, and it really has created a development boom in Northwest Austin. You can see 62% yes, that was that Bush midterm election, and they did not ask everyone in the service area. They just asked people who live inside Austin if they wanted to vote for it, and over 60% said yes. In 2014, they thought, well, you know, the train delivered in 2010, now they've seen it, they're jealous, they want to work on it. But something that they didn't tell people is that we also launched our not quite BRT service called Metro Rapid. We have the 801 and the 803, and the 801 is what is being replaced with light rail presently in Project Connect. But if you go back to 2014, we were just about to cut the ribbon on these high-frequency transit lines. So you can't go to the feds and say, hey, you know that grant you gave us for BRT? Forget it. We're going to put an LRT there instead. But the public did not understand that. So what happened was the rail advocates split in half. They wanted the project, but they didn't think that alignment was the one to start with. And I get it. It was terrible. It did not pass 57% no. And again, it's because the people who should have been on your side weren't, and it's partly for two reasons. One, they weren't brought in before the planning started, because if they understood this scenario and the situation, they might have gotten on board. But I think more important, it's just showing the single line. People are like, why are you doing a single line? So we took that into consideration for the 2020 plan. We had just done in 2018 a huge bus realignment where we made as many lines as possible run every 15 minutes or faster. And it really helped us get the muscle memory of how to engage the public on a big, complicated plan about a service they may or may not use. And so for 2020, what we decided to do was look at the long-range plan for Project Connect. Every rail line, every bus rapid transit line, every neighborhood circulator service. So that way people understood if they're voting today on this starter line, it's actually in service to this larger vision. And it was a little complicated because on the front end, it's very helpful because you look at the map, and if you live in the city, you can see a line that's going to serve you. But in actuality, it's not going to serve you anytime soon. We're going to have to start in phases and eventually get there. So what helped on the front end to get over the finish line also causes you issues later when people feel like, hey, you said this one thing and now this is actually what we're going to get. But point of the story, again, 58% said yes. This was that Biden 2020 election. And what was important here is that every other project was a bond election, and this one was a tax rate election. So rather than getting stuck with a certain amount of funding and then finding you have to value engineer everything out because you have no money, this provided an ongoing, perpetual funding cycle for the project. So you could do phase one and then move to phase two. That there was funding for operations and maintenance as well as for the built environment. All right, so moving forward, how did we get so many people to say yes on a big, complicated project? Given that, in 2020 there was, this global pandemic going on, and suddenly we were trying to get people to the polls, but we couldn't talk to them. We couldn't host public meetings. And it just turned out I was the guy with the Zoom account, and I had gotten Zoom previously. I had been using GoToMeeting, but it allowed for foreign language as well as sign language interpretation to happen live in the platform, which nobody thought was that big a deal until we couldn't reach people any other way. So we decided to host a ton of Zoom meetings. In our region, we have the community registry. I'm not sure if you have something similar, but every nonprofit, neighborhood association, any organization that works with the city registers into the community registry. So you could send a blast out saying, hey, we're available to come to your meeting. And we found that many community groups needed digital tools. So we lent our Zoom for their regular meetings, and then we were a guest for their meeting. In addition, we created workshops that felt like a television show in English and Spanish with sign language. We would invite people to come to the show, all the mics off, and then we would treat it like a radio show. So if you had a question, you could be live on the air and go ahead and get it answered live. In addition, we started leveraging Mentimeter, which many of you may be familiar with already at this point, but at the time it was very novel to get immediate feedback from the community without them going to like SurveyMonkey and then a week later you issue a PDF. This was in real time, here's what people here think. We also created an online engagement library so you could see every recording, every transcript, all the notes and the feedback. And then we had online forms for people to give feedback in a more traditional way. But then we also thought, instead of hosting events inside, let's reach people where they are. So we had a massive at-stop outreach campaign going to every bus and rail hub, every park and ride, every park. And we had already gotten the strength of that in the 2018 bus realignment. So we had all the same training materials, all the same outreach set up. We did door-to-door outreach. I have personally walked the entire length of the rail line from top to tail and east to west more than once. And I can just tell you as an aside, every time you go, it's pretty much an 80-20 split, with 80% saying they never heard of it before. Even though I'm the same guy who handed the same person the piece of paper, they have never heard of it before. But I'm pretty sure they will hear about it when the construction starts. In addition, we went to every business on that corridor, everyone that was displaced. We host bus and walking tours, so that way any of the incoming planners and engineers understood the context in which they'd be working. So we took them along to every TOD that was planned on the line, on the bus service itself. We even took them on a walking tour by Lady Bird Lake, so that when they build the bridge that was shown in the previous presentation, they didn't ruin the environment in which it was operating. And believe it or not, one of the teams asked, is it okay if we just cover this trail in concrete in this area? And I was like, no, it is not okay. This is why we're bringing you here to look at this crushed granite trail. We also had poster board explainers. We did ice cream socials out in the park. And then also we sponsored a lot of nonprofit events so we could be in the room. We did win an award for this outreach with IAP2. If you're not participating with them, International Association for Public Participation. I'm going to spare you my video and just move back to the project. So you have already heard from the Austin Transit Partnership today. They are essentially building the light rail elements. Cat Metro operates the transit service, and they are operating every other element that was promised in Project Connect. So they have already, we'll talk about the things that they're running, but commuter rail, light rail, BRT, circulator service, and other things like expansion of the bike share system. And then finally, the city is able to, one, finance, because it is their property tax election. They confirm the right-of-way acquisition and eminent domain, and then we actually included $300 million in anti-displacement funds along those corridors, and the city is managing that project, some through property acquisition and some for nonprofit support for wraparound services. And so far what we've delivered, again, it was 2000 was the election. We opened a new downtown train station. We also have started double tracking and putting some sidings in. We opened the McAllis station, which is by our soccer stadium up north, and there's another one coming as well. We absorbed our bike share system and rebranded as Metro Bike Share. And then we started launching community circulator services. You have some similar, like I know Arlington works with VIA, and we also launched that program with VIA. But we've got about 10 of those operating now with these funds. And then finally, you've seen the project. So far, this is our starter line. And there's a lot of discussion about connecting to the airport. There's a lot of discussion about connecting further north. There's a lot further south it could go. But I would tell you that some of the issue is crossing TxDOT infrastructure, just confidentially between us and the ballroom. If you cross onto some state infrastructure, then you're inviting the state to insert itself in the project. And for those of you who are aware of the project, there's been a back and forth, like, will it happen, won't it happen, will the state step in? And so it was decided, like, let's not go past the state hospital. Like, we could, but let's not get into trouble there. Let's not cross 183 because we could get in trouble there. So in some ways, this has been right-sized for the political moment rather than the financial one. With that, I'll leave you there. We can have a conversation separately. But again, you can reach me now at my new email, which is there at Lime. I'm doing government relations, and I'm very often in this region, as well as in Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So I hope to see you out there. Thanks.
All right. So I'm Katy Atkiss. I work with the Texas Streets Coalition. We haven't been at this nearly as long as many of you have. We're in our 4th year in our current iteration. This is more, I feel like our work is as aspirational as some of the plans are. I'm proud of what we've done so far. Let's see, where am I pointing this? Here we go. Okay, so there's a lot of data on why our current transportation system doesn't work, right? But we don't really need to dwell in all of this. What I really want to get to is the experience of our transportation system. You probably recognize this as Austin's I-35. There are so many aspects of our lives that transportation touches that it's really difficult to stay focused and sum them all up. But the bottom line is that our very skewed transportation system, with over 89% of TxDOT's budget being constitutionally dedicated to roads, has resulted in more of this than what everyone here in this room would like to see. It creates obvious mobility problems for people who don't drive for a variety of reasons, but mobility problems for all of us. So as someone noted, I think it was Lorena Campos noted earlier, it's becoming harder and harder to say with a straight face that more road lanes are gonna solve our problems. Thankfully, the solution is obvious. It's remarkably simple, and it is to invest in this multimodal system. So what the Texas Streets Coalition is doing is we are working at the state level on policy and budget solutions so that we can see more of this. And hopefully we are facilitating you all and being able to do more of your work, because we'd love to see more of that all over the state. So as we all know, freeways aren't actually free. They have huge, huge costs for all of us. And the issue is really urgent because TxDOT's planning, their statewide long-range transportation plan is a 24-year visionary timeline. When they talk about the unified transportation plan, when the budget starts falling more into place, that's a 10-year plan. So we really need to make sure that we are stepping in today to make changes so that more of this can happen. So our coalition, we're a statewide group that's working to put people first in a safe, affordable, and accessible multimodal transportation system of choice. Peter asked me earlier, we're actually 21 organizations in our leadership from across 7 regions of Texas, but our overall work is almost 50 organizations from 14 areas, or working on the state and national levels. So we each came at this work by working on local transportation issues. We're a group of both professional nonprofit advocate organizations, as well as grassroots groups that grew up out of the needs that people were seeing in their own backyards, or the impact they were experiencing once construction started. So it's a good mix of folks coming from a variety of perspectives. And together, what we've done is identify some of the systemic issues at the state level that result in transportation not working locally. So together, we're working towards those solutions. So our members bring expertise in multiple areas. We are active transportation folks, public transit, intercity passenger rail, highway reform, urban planning, air quality, public health, equitable communities. And we're looking to build relationships, especially with industry partners, as well as advocates in other areas. We've recently started working with some housing advocates. Of course, you all know about transit-oriented development. So yeah, if you're interested in joining us, if you're interested in bringing your perspective, your understanding, please, please reach out. We would love to work with you. So we're doing some research and a lot of advocacy, all through volunteer work groups. We are working our best to support our partners in their local advocacy while we're also working on these state level issues. And only our legislative work group is actually listed here, but there's a lot of work groups of expertise that inform that legislative work, like for active transportation, for example. So in the 89th session, we saw some wins. Of course, you guys are all familiar with the at-grade crossing improvements, those grants. And then we had some losses as well. And then just saw a lot of significant challenges. These are 4 bills that we made calls to action across the state to object to. Thankfully, they were all defeated. You've heard about some of them more specifically in this talk today, and then we'll hear about the DART issues as well. But what all of these bills have in common is that one, they countered locally made decisions about what was best for any given community, and 2, they prevented, or they would have prevented, an investment in a multimodal system. So I don't quite understand why this is a partisan issue. I can't imagine why anyone would prefer the first photo that I showed as opposed to the second photo, but you know, there's a lot of reasons behind that. So in the 90th session, we're focusing on 4 kind of broad areas. Fix it first, which is the idea that road investment should first and foremost maintain the infrastructure that we currently have built before we are expanding into either expanding lanes into new right-of-way or expanding into absolutely virgin territory altogether. Second is to invest in multimodal access. Third is to prioritize safety, and 4th is to modernize our system by looking at things like the modeling and the metrics and different things that are driving the decisions we're making to make sure, again, that we're putting people first in order to make sure that our transportation system is all about access, that it's serving us, and that we're not serving this road system while we're sitting in traffic. So again, please join our movement for sane movement around our great state. My information is up here, so please take out your phone, email me immediately, and I will get back to you ASAP. And yeah, thanks for everyone who's presented and all the conversations I've had. I've really learned a lot about rail over the past couple of days.
Oh, it's good to be last, right? Hi, my name is Keun Lee. I'm the Policy Research Chair for Dallas Area Transit Alliance. And I want to make sure that we're clear. We are not DART. We are unaffiliated. We are a grassroots, passenger-led advocacy group for the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Service Area. So some background information. The entity that DART was formed, that became DART, was written under Transportation Code Chapter 452. This was back in the 70s. And in 1983, residents from the Dallas area decided to vote. The cities, basically, voters of the cities voted to become part of the Dallas area rapid transit service. And that dedicated a 1-cent sales tax that would fund the system. And a city council, a government can call for an election to whether to stay or leave DART every 6 years. And if a city leaves DART, they are obligated to pay back their debt obligations. There's a formula. I don't quite know how they formulate it, but usually it takes about, let's say, about 5 years for a city to pay it off. And then they're free to have another vote to determine where that 1-cent sales tax goes to. And I'm sure you've all read in the news, cities are having issues, and there's a variety of reasons, disputed, real, imagined. I'm not here to judge, but there were cost increases since COVID. We're all familiar with that. The state has restricted ad valorem, so property tax revenues that cities can take year after year. There's disagreements regarding the governance of the board. There's issues with service disparities, suburbs versus Dallas, and variety of factors that led to some suburban cities to reevaluate whether they want to not take that 1 cent that goes to DART. So that's the background of how we started. So data started because in the summer of 2024, about 6 or 7 cities started putting these resolutions on the agenda. They were almost all word for word identical to reduce DART's, their sales contribution to DART by 25%. And within 2 weeks, 3 cities passed it. And these resolutions, while symbolic, were kind of used as ammunition to take the issue to the state legislature to pass a bill that would cut the sales tax contribution by 25%. And you can see the cities that were that passed the resolutions. Rowlett, notably, were convinced to rescind that resolution. So our first meeting was in downtown Dallas. You can see our group. I believe that's our first meeting. It was in a little community room in a condo building. In our second meeting, we have 50 people attending. 50 people attending in person, and they were all across the DART service area and even beyond. We had people coming from Denton or Fort Worth because they all had an interest in keeping this service alive. At the end of the summer, we had an official structure. Leadership was elected, and we had a monthly meeting schedule established. And if you can't see it in this picture, but this group is very young. People say I look young, but I am in my 40s, and I was probably one of the top 5 oldest people in that room. This youthful energy, this knowledge of social media, this knowledge of coding, programming, all sorts of things that are kind of alien to me in some ways, helped us really jumpstart our organization, because they had knowledge of group chat software, they had knowledge of social media, how to get engagement, search engine optimization, anything you would need to really get our message out there. So our purpose, as we defined it, was we're a grassroots volunteer organization to advocate for the passengers in the DART service area, and we want public transportation to work for everyone, and we advocate for better service, better funding, and to raise awareness for any issues that would affect our riders. And to go through the legislative fight that followed, HB 3187 and SB 1557, they were identical bills. They aimed to cut DART's funding by 25%. We used our social media presence, wrote articles detailing the issue, explaining people, keeping people up to speed, and our monthly meetings were used to have call to actions, keep people up with the developments that were coming along the way, and we really galvanized our membership to attend all the relevant city council meetings. We also did a lobby day in the early April and visited around 50 legislative offices to explain our issue and to advocate to keep the funding. We also had about 10 or more people go to the public hearing in Austin when HB 3187 was put up in front of the Transportation Committee. We also had further lobbying of the Calendars Committee, where if you're familiar with the system, they have a red card, green card system. We had a bunch of people go over there to put in their red cards so it wouldn't be put up in calendars, so it would not reach the floor. And we used outreach programs, outreach software to send hundreds of phone calls and emails to legislative offices. What we've heard is that the phones never stop ringing about this issue. And at the end of the legislative session in 2025, the bill did not go to the floor for a vote. And this was our lobby day. You can see how young these guys are. You never see that kind of youth in political organizations or any kind of advocacy group. Well, maybe advocacy groups, but I've worked in some politics, and usually I'm the youngest one there, but here I was one of the oldest people. It was very encouraging. And this was taken about at 1 a.m. at the Transportation Committee, where we testified against HB 3187. And a funny story about this picture, the young man in the center, Shyam, I believe he was 14 years old, and he stuck with us and testified to the Transportation Committee, and the former Speaker of the House, Representative Craddock, presented him with the Texas state flag, and that was a pretty cool event. And earlier, I believe they were talking about how the human story resonates. And during this hearing, which was done late at night, around midnight, there were a lot of testimonies talking about statistics, about money, about the legality, about economic opportunity. At the end of the day, what everyone in that committee remembered was that young man going up there and telling his story. The human element was what really moved these legislators. Of course, since the legislative fight was over, the cities went ahead and called for an election to leave DART. In the end, some of these cities, because of a deal with DART, financial and governance deal with DART, they decided to rescind the call for elections, but Highland Park, University Park, and Addison decided to go ahead with the elections. And we organized and partnered with all these organizations listed to get the manpower necessary to start hitting the streets, to start doing interviews, canvassing, block walking, and we hit about 9,000 voters in a 3 to 4 month period. I've done block walking before, and to hit about 30 houses, it takes me about 2 to 3 hours. So think about the amount of people and man hours that we got in order to further our cause to defeat these elections. And we had constant social media content. People knew what kind of video clips get all the likes and all the retweets and whatever they may be. So we had a lot of success there to get the word out. We had press releases. We had articles detailing the subject to inform the voters. And ultimately, Addison and University Park decided to stay in the system. Addison voted, yes, we will stay in DART by 70 to 30, and University Park, 54% of the voters said yes to DART. Highland Park, unfortunately, decided to leave the system. And these are more photos of our volunteers. On the left is at Addison. They were pole greeting. On the right, these guys were block walking in Highland and University Park. So what do we do next? Well, we're still, I like to call ourselves a group of friends. We are not a nonprofit. Everything we've done up to now has been self-funded. But to keep this going, we know we have to organize as a nonprofit because there will be leadership changes, and we just want to keep being an advocate for the riders in the Dallas region. With the immediate threats gone, the next legislative session will be about funding. I believe it's about funding because of the general mobility plan agreement that DART has made with the cities. There will be a funding gap that will start rearing its head around late 2027. So we will be going up there to see if we can get some state funding. I know it's a long shot. And also continue building relationships that we made with local leaders in the cities and elected officials in Austin. Public transportation is often a blind spot. What I found is that city leaders usually see it just as numbers on a spreadsheet, as a cost center. We want to change that mindset, have them see the people that use the system and advocate for their perspective. And also, our blind spot are underserved communities. Public advocacy often is relegated to people of means and people who have free time, basically, on their hands. But the people who depend on public transportation the most are the people that do not have the time or the means to advocate for the cause that affect them the most. And we want to strengthen the connections between community leaders with organizations to see if we can get those perspectives into our fold. And I believe, so this is our current organization. This is our core group. We've been at it for about 2 years now. It's been a sprint, but this is our team. And you can connect with us, follow us on social media. These QR codes lead to our newsletter and our Substack, where we post articles about the subject. We do some deep dives on city finances sometimes, because city finances are what led us to all of this. And keep in touch if you have any. If you want to connect with us, feel free to reach out. Our email is on our website. Thank you.
Well, thank you three, and y'all are doing, all three of you doing some amazing advocacy work. We have time probably for one quick go-around here, and I'd like to ask all three of you in a brief statement there, what's one thing that you would tell the attendees here today that they should focus on to be a good advocate? So here.
All right, I'll take the stab at it first. I think the most important thing is to co-create with the community. I think I've seen oftentimes many beautiful plans and engineering plans, and then you go to the community and you tell them about it, and they don't like it. And you're upset because you've spent so much time working on it. But if you started the process with going to the community and saying, we have a problem, how do you think we can fix this? They will start giving you ideas. Now, I'm not saying they're all great ideas. And you may actually come back to them with the same plan you want to do. But if you don't give them a chance to influence it, it's your plan. And you're probably not even from that city. You're probably flying in your consultants to bring this plan to the people and save them. They don't want to be saved. They want what they need for their community. So they want to come to some sort of event, or they want you to come to them, more likely, so that they can tell you what all the problems are and a couple of solutions, so that way when you come back, you say, we heard you. Here's what we heard when we met with you last. You don't like this, you do want that, and based on that, we have come up with some plans, not one plan, a few. You need to give people false choices, even if they don't have a real choice. So for example, if I tell you I have a plan, and you don't like it, your default options are yes, no. But if you come with 2 plans, your default options are A or B. And it's really important, no falls away. So I would highly recommend, again, start with the community, have a listening session before you present your idea, and when you come, bring choices, because people will obsess about the opportunity to choose rather than telling you to go away.
I think one of our strengths is the breadth of our organization. When we have partners like Data who say, hey, we have this problem locally, this is coming before the state legislator, we can turn out people from all over the state to support or to oppose. And I think that's really powerful. We're also able to sometimes find constituents of specific legislators that we want to target, so that I think, yeah, the more voices you have, the stronger you're going to be. And then to Keun's point, just stories. People's stories are really important. So we do one session, we do one advocacy day every session where we invite the members of all of the organizations that we work with. They have vast networks on the ground that they're listening to and getting their stories, and they kind of roll up at the Texas Streets Coalition. And so we invite all of them, and they get buses, and we all go to Austin, and we give them our agenda, and we say, this is what we're pushing, this is what we're interested in, but we want you here today to tell your stories and talk about how transportation decisions are impacting your everyday. So that's 2. But
I would say get to know your city manager. Get to know who deals with the real power in your local community. That way you can find out where you can actually focus your efforts. So yeah, that's the lesson I learned during this whole deal.
All right. At hand for our panel today, Lonny, Keun, and Katy. Thank you. Appreciate it.